Are you contouring now?
I just thought I'd give it a try. Really work.
Just a little pencil contour.
You come back and have like full Kardashian contouring at my nose. I'm just like,
There we go. I think that's perfect. Hi, everyone, and welcome to episode 3 of Parallel Drives. I'm one of your hosts, Joe DeLude, and I'm here with my best friend, James Vincent. Say hi, James.
hi, James.
And we are here.
You knew I was going to say that.
I knew you were. We're not doing another take on that one, though.
I'm bringing you back to vaudeville.
Hello, my baby. Hello, my honey. Hello, my ragtime gal.
We are here. Our podcast? Wow, I turned Rhode Island there real quick. Our podcast is about friendships. So we explore.
Great idea.
What?
Good idea.
Yeah, good idea. We explore friendships, historical, fictional, and then we relate them to our own lives and how these specific friendships also affected us in our lives. So this week, I am going to take the lead, and we are going to talk about two friends. But before we start, I would like to do a little intro to this. So imagine it. It's 1993-ish, and Joe decides that he doesn't want to live in Rhode Island anymore and decides that he's going to move down to Atlanta, Georgia, where he has a friend of his. Shortly after he moves down there, also side note, car broke down on the way down there, was picked up by a gay man, brought to a garage, who offered him Xanax, and then was brought to his friends in North Carolina by this white trash man and his son, who is not his son, his brother, who is mentally challenged. On a dark, long road in the South, just looking out the window thinking, I'm going to die. But I didn't, made it to Atlanta. And not too long after that, James comes down and moves in with me. We lived in a 1-bedroom in this amazing complex.
Yeah.
Now, one of James's exes had given us these videotapes of a show that had just come out in 1992. And we watched these.
Which one of my exes?
Was it Steven? Didn't he give it to you? That's how we got them.
No, I dated Steven like years later.
So who gave them to us? I thought it was. I always thought it was him. I always thought they were his.
I thought they were yours.
Well, someone gave us these. Someone of a show that started in 1992 in the UK on BBC Two. And that show is what we're going to talk about tonight. It's absolutely fabulous. And we are going to talk about the friendship of Patsy and Edina. So,
bop, bop.
Bop, bop, which is also why I'm wearing something so sparkly. I wanted some La Croix, but I didn't have La Croix.
La Croix, sweetie.
So I just decided to wear lots of accessories and some sparkly. And we will also be drinking Bully and Stoli. So a little champagne, a little vodka. There you go. Cheers.
We
have to make
need to make room
for the vodka.
These are my little.
You got like a mega. Oh, it's a B. Arthur shot. That should be a much bigger glass than if it was a B. Arthur shot. That's for sure.
I would love if all of the other Golden Girls were regular size.
And hers was like double.
Like the Barbie dolls that you made me.
Yep. I do remember that. So cheers. Now that
Yeah.
you're cheers.
Chin chin.
Chin chin. So, just to give you a little background, I'm sure most of you know Absolutely Fabulous, but to give you a little bit of the background, the show started on BBC Two in 1992. And then the following year, it went to BBC One. It ran there from 1993 to 2012, 39 episodes and 7 TV specials. So they were basically on TV on and off for about 25 years. Because they wouldn't do regular seasons where they would just follow. They would sort of decide to do a season whenever they felt like it.
And it's that British thing too. Like American shows will run for like 25 years with 24 episodes a year, but I love the way that British shows kind of.
Yeah, that they don't always, and it's not always like, okay, it started in the spring of this year and we're going to have the second season the spring of next year. Sometimes it takes a couple of years, sometimes a few years. Those first 3 seasons ran consecutively. They also don't do as many episodes per season. So I don't know if all of you know this. I know you know this, James, but Absolutely Fabulous started as a sketch on the French and Saunders show. And so Jennifer Saunders worked with her comedy partner, Don French, and they have this amazing show called French and Saunders. And if you haven't seen it, you need to go out and watch it. They do some amazing, ridiculous sketches. They recreate films so well and make it ridiculous. Like Whatever Happened to Baby Jane is called Whatever Happened to Baby Dawn. They did an amazing Lord of the Rings, which was really incredible because Jennifer Saunders was played Gandalf and would come really close to the camera and look like she was really big, and then Dawn French would be all the way in the back.
Delicious. I'm so glad you like it, Grandalf. Oh, hang on. What? You should have this cup. You should have this cup.
I'm the giant.
I know that. That's why you should have this cup. I should have the big one. It makes me look smaller.
No, because if you...
No. No.
And then like holding on to like a giant mug. It's really great.
Their music videos are so good.
Yeah. So the sketch was called Modern Mother and Daughter, and that aired in 1990 on French and Saunders. And Jennifer Saunders played the mom, whose name was Adriana. And Dawn French played the daughter, whose name was Saffron, which is still what Edina's daughter is called. But it was more a little bit about how this woman was like a modern mother, businesswoman, PR person, but she couldn't really function, and she was a drunk and she did drugs, but she relied on her daughter for emotional and financial support. So not quite what Absolutely Fabulous ended up being. So series 1 through 3 of the seasons 1 through 3 ran on the BBC from 92 to 95, and then they followed it by a 2-part series finale, which was called The Last Shout, and that was in 1996. In 2001, Jennifer Saunders was offered another slot for a TV show, and she wrote this pilot called Mirrorball, which you can watch online. And it was basically using almost all of the same cast from Absolutely Fabulous, but as different characters, and it involved the theater world. So all of these people were theater actors. And it's so strange to watch it because you just hear the characters of Absolutely Fabulous when you're watching them, even though they look slightly different or they may be slightly different, because you're so used to hearing those voices. And I had a crazy allergy attack this weekend, so I was out of commission and couldn't really do anything. So I dove deep into the show and also binge watched all of the episodes and the movie, which was really fun to do.
It caused your allergy attack because you were expecting to hear them as Patsy and Eddie, and they were different characters, and so you went into like anaphylactic shock.
No, I didn't do that. It wasn't that at all. It is surreal though, especially after binge watching the show and then watching this today. You know, I searched to see if I could find it online today, and I did, and to see it, I was like, this is odd. But after she did it, Jennifer Saunders realized that the characters from Ab Fab were too rich and interesting to sort of give up. So they brought this series back for another season. And from 2001 to 2004, they had 2 seasons, 2 full seasons, and 3 one-hour-long specials, which included the Ab Fab in New York one, which everybody knows about because it was a big thing when they came to New York to film, and they filmed on St. Mark's, so I remember that. Not that I was working on St. Mark's, but I remember when they were there for it. And the episode was originally called Gay, but if you look on, I think on Wikipedia, it still says that the episode's called Gay, but it's changed to Ab Fab in New York. Then they did a Christmas special called Cold Turkey, and then the season finale, which was called White Box. They also did Comic Relief Sketch, and they did 3 more episodes in 2011, which corresponded with the Summer Olympics, so it sort of ends with the Olympics happening. So it's rated the 17th greatest British TV show of all time.
Oh.
Yeah, and then they did the movie in 2016.
What was the
So-
number 1 British show of all time?
You know what? I don't know. I didn't look that up. I was just looking up Absolutely Fabulous. I went
How did you look at
I went down a rabbit hole of Absolutely Fabulous. Also, by the way, I did say at the end of the last podcast, I said, thank you all for joining us on Parallel Lives, which is either a Plutarchian book about ancient Greeks and Romans or a really bad made-for-TV movie in 1994 that starred Matthew Perry, Liza Minnelli, Robert Wagner, James Belushi. Yeah. So
what?
yeah,
Really?
I said, I don't know why I said Parallel Lives, but I did. I don't know why that came into mind, but it is Parallel Drives. So the 2 main characters that we're going to talk about are Patsy Stone and Edina Monsoon. So Edina Monsoon works in PR. And one of my favorite lines is when Saf goes, I don't even know what you do. And she goes, I PR things.
I PR things! People, places, concepts. Lulu!
And but she lives this life, and she lives this life with her best friend, Patsy Stone, who, when we first meet them, she's a fashion editor for a magazine. What?
Not an editor.
Fashion director, that's right. Later she becomes...
I'm not an editor, I'm a director.
Director. What do? I direct.
I direct things.
And so she also changes jobs throughout. At one point she's working for this store and stylist called Jeremy. And then she's a fashion editor in the movie, I believe, for that magazine. So both of them are, grew up together. They went to school together. Patsy hung out at Eddie's house because of, her mother was this crazy existential witchy character who didn't want children but would have sex with all of these men and got pregnant by all of them. So there's like so many of their friends, so many of the relatives roaming around that we don't even know how many there are. When you first meet Patsy, she says she's 39. And like probably about 10 years later in the series, she says she's 41. So in 10 years, she aged 2. But they just have amazing adventures together. They are always with each other. There's a time where Patsy's living in the house with them. They always go to events. They support each other. And in the movie, Safi's daughter Lola says about Patsy, why does she stay? And Patsy says, because it's bloody good fun. And I thought it's interesting that this was the show that we sort of gravitated to and really honed in on in Atlanta, because I feel like Atlanta was that for us, where we hung out all the time. We went to all these really amazing parties and all these amazing clubs, and we just had fun. A lot of fun.
Yeah.
So
it's funny because my move to Atlanta was a little similar and a little different. Because remember, you and I had talked about me moving there, but I didn't know how to tell people I was moving away. So I told people I was only going for a few weeks. And I took a bus down because even though the flight was cheaper, I got rid of my car and I needed that money to move. And so I took the bus down because I didn't want to live somewhere right away. I wanted that time to process that.
yeah.
And I also had a weird day experience because at one point I woke up on the bus and the guy next to me was, what can I say in the podcast? Touching me fondling me.
Yeah, you could say that.
But it was okay. It was totally cool. I was into it. I wasn't like Me Too'd or anything. And then I got off with him in North Carolina and hooked up, and then got back on the bus and met Joe in downtown Atlanta, where I was like bringing this big trunk, and it was just strange. And I just felt like it was the beginning of something completely different. It was like I had to let everything go because I think I grew up feeling like I had so many expectations of how I had to live my life.
Mm-hmm.
And Atlanta felt like a new beginning. Like I was Jim. And then when I got to Atlanta, I made everyone call me James.
James, yeah.
Yeah. It was like a new beginning for me. It was kind of like, I'm gonna get down there and just let my hair down. And it just became this, it was such an amazing creative time and such an amazing creative place. And I just thought, oh my God, like no one here is gonna know me. And then remember I got there and the guy across the hall was like, oh, did you date so-and-so in Providence? And I was like, hadn't told that guy that we were no longer dating. Like I just told him I was going to New York to Atlanta for a few weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And then like, this is my new roommate who just moved here. And the guy was like, wait. And I was like, oh man, so small world.
Yeah.
But I think that's where we really kind of came into our own.
Yeah, well, also because it was the first time that either of us, I mean, we had moved out of our families' homes and had apartments in Providence, but we were still basically home.
Yeah.
You know, and this was the first time of really like going away, not really knowing anybody, and just sort of living this life, even though we lived a great life in Providence. We had lots of fun and we had these amazing friends and we dressed up all the time and had parties at the house that I lived in. You know, it was much different. It was a comfort level to that. I remember that at one of those parties that there was a guy that I thought was really cute, and this is in Providence at the house we lived in. And I thought he was really cute, and he invited me to go to the bathroom with him. And naively, I thought it was because he wanted to make out with me. And then instead, he offered me drugs. And I was so freaked out by that.
Scandalous.
I know. And then I moved to Atlanta and then forget it. Nothing was, yeah.
Nothing.
But yeah, so I think that it's funny because I think about how Patsy and Edina were, and if you think about their relationship, on the surface it seems very thing oriented, very fabulous oriented, about having nice things, gorgeous little things, and how it was about like the parties and all of that. And as you watch the series go along, you realize that Edina still has this idea that she is getting older and she still wants those parties and she's trying desperately to cling on to those parties. And Patsy sort of just agrees that it's like, yeah, this is what it is now, and this is where we are now. But when you start to dig deeper and you start to watch a lot of the episodes back to back, you realize like how amazing friends they are, and how much they care for each other, even though they would probably never admit that. But the fact that they can talk to each other about anything, they're always there for each other. When they have that big rift and Patsy goes and moves to New York to work at a fashion magazine, and Eddie stays in London, and they're both sort of lost without the other one. They don't know what to do. And at the end of the episode, Patsy's like on the top of this really tall building in New York City, like having a drink and like drinking out of a bottle and like being all lonesome. And then all of a sudden this helicopter comes up and it's Eddie, and she's in the helicopter, and they're like, they have this reconciliation that they don't even need to talk about. They don't have to say anything to each other. All they have to do is know that she's there for her. And that's what's the most important thing about it.
I think, they have those moments too. Like I think about the one where one of them where I guess Patsy has a new friend, and that she's going to lunch with or something.
No, Eddie is it was Edina is, oh God, what was it?
Your darling, the
She
queen
was
of minimalist.
dating someone. She was dating someone, and she was supposed to go to lunch with him, and Patsy wants
Yeah.
to come along, and Eddie says no.
And then she ends up like pulling Lulu into it, and
Yeah, Eddie ends up being on her own, so she pulls Lulu into her table, and then Patsy sees Sandra Rhodes and pretends like they were meeting, and then she joins her with Britt Eklund, who looks exactly like Patsy, who is also a Bond girl, which Britt.
I don't know at all, do I?
Yeah, but interesting. Joanna Lumley was also in a Bond movie, so and I think that I went through some interviews of Jennifer Saunders and Joanna Lumley, and I think that they pulled a lot from their lives, the people that they knew. Jennifer Saunders said that there was a lot of inspiration from Bananarama. So Jennifer Saunders and Dawn French had become friends with Bananarama because they did a comic relief with them.
Yeah, and they did a Bananarama spoof band in French and Son that was really good.
Yes.
But I can't remember the name of the band.
I don't remember the name of the band either. But so Jennifer Saunders said that they became friends with them, and they were like, those girls were partiers. Like no one was drinking vodka at the time, and she was like, they would just be there like drinking bottles of vodka and be like, let's go out. And she said one of the best moments was when she saw one of them get out of a cab, and she came out butt first and fell onto the ground, and she was like, that's class. And which is that comes from, where they're always so drunk, and she always falls out of the cab. And I was so proud the one night that I was working for Mac and did an event. We did the opening night for Cirque du Soleil, and it was like Ellis Island area, like somewhere over there. So you had to take the ferry to go there. One of the models didn't show up, and the models were just people dressed up in costumes that would walk around. That was it. Like they didn't have anything to do except walk around in costume. And one of them didn't show up and happened to be my size. So they were like, can you wear the costume and go out? And I was like, can I drink? And they said, sure. And I was like, great. Free champagne. And so, I was just walking around in this outfit, drinking champagne all night, got really drunk, made friends with some of the other performers. We ended up going on the ferry back to New York. We got in a cab. They lived in the East Village. I lived in the East Village. I was living actually with you, James, at the time. And so we had gone around and taken all of the extra bottles of vodka, and they were Magnum bottles, not vodka, of champagne. They were Magnum bottles of champagne. So I had 2 big Magnum bottles of champagne, my backpack and my kit, and I'm in the back seat holding the bottles of champagne. I open up the door, and I literally fell out of the door onto my back, and I just started laughing because I was like, I finally made it. I've done it. I'm Eddie right now. Yeah,
I love that. I remember that. Their band for French and Saunders was Jennifer Saunders, Dawn French, and Kathy Burke, and they were Lana Ninu Nunu.
And the other thing that I love about Jennifer Saunders is that she was like the original Ryan Murphy. She used all the same people, like people that she had started with, that that were on French and Saunders, that did the young ones, were they in the young ones? They worked with these people, and they used a lot of them in Absolutely Fabulous, and were very loyal to those people and had them come back over and over. So, and every time they would do a special, or when they did the movie, they tried to get as many of the people as they could, to come back and be part of it, which I really love about that.
I think a lot of comedians tend to do that, like they work with the same people, and I noticed that especially with English comedians, You know, there seems to be like a loyalty or a camaraderie that comes across, and you see it now with American comedies as well. I think you and I are very similar. We tend to kind of try and pull our friends into things. So I think it's something I've always appreciated, knowing that they're doing these new adventures together.
Yeah, and I think
'Cause
it's because you find that group of people that you work so well with that understand you. So you're not having to explain everything. They understand how it works and they know how to do it.
I think there was another show too that they did together, or most of them did together, that was kind of a spoof of like crime movies. Am I remembering that? Too many parties in Atlanta.
I know. I know.
The number one British comedy of all time, I assumed it was, and it is Faulty Towers.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah, there was a time that there was going to be an American remake, which was going to star Carrie Fisher and Barbara Carrera, who I was like, who is Barbara Carrera? She was Angelica Nero. She was Angelica Nero on Dallas.
Yeah, I remember that. But I think there were a few different ones. Like I remember there was an attempt to do one with Jean Smart.
I didn't see that one, but there was one with Catherine Hahn and Kristen Johnston that was supposed to go, and then Fox pulled the plug on that one.
I think it also is just one of those things where people saw it work in another country, so they just put two girlfriends together and were like, this is Ab Fab,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. And I think if you look, what's really fun to watch is watching the two of them being interviewed together, because you can tell they really are friends. And you can tell how much they really like each other. And it reminded me a lot of you and I, like talking to each other, where like one person will end another person's sentence, or they like talk about these things, and it was very much that relationship. And I think that's what made also their on-screen relationship work so well.
I think it's very funny too, because for Americans that are watching, I think we're so familiar with them from Ab Fab. And so I knew them as these very like gay icons. You know, all of my friends couldn't quote the TV show. And so when I was dating Emmanuel and living in London, we went to see French and Saunders live, kind of imagining that it was going to be this very gay Ab Fab audience. And the thing is, Dawn French and Jennifer Saunders, their reach is so wide, and they appeal to so many people. And like the Vicar of Dibley and some of their other projects have also been huge projects. And so it was just this real cross section of people. And that was kind of wonderful to see too, because I think when you think of female writers and you think of groups of female actors who are coming together and really kind of directing, producing, writing these impactful shows, I think it's amazing to recognize how much influence Dawn French and Jennifer Saunders had, and then with creating Ab Fab, you know, how international that reach was. And I think for me, it was also feeling like included in the conversation, you know, like I saw myself in them, in their insecurities that kind of led to their craziness, but also that kind of permission to live out loud. I think that was something that was so, especially at that time in my life in like 1992 or 3, you know, I was like 20. And I don't think I had given I didn't know who I was yet.
Yeah.
You know, one of those things where you look back and, you know, now I'm 47 and I'll think, oh, I love this music, or I love this album, or I love, you know, this food. And at that time in my life, I hadn't been exposed to anything, you know, like I look back to Atlanta and it sounds so crazy, but like I remember eating sushi for the first time, and like eating different cuisines and drinking certain things and trying certain things, and weird things. Like remember the one time I was like dating that guy who like was always over, and I thought was really sweet because he would come and meet me at work every day and like make us dinner, and then I found out he was just homeless and he didn't have anywhere to go. Yep. So yeah, like what the fuck, like
you get dinners out of it though, so cheers for that.
Yeah, but he's, you know, that only happens when you're like 21. I hope I'm smarter.
But I'm 23, And remember, I dated that one guy down there, the really crazy one that was like the crazy, crazy drinker that would like drink and then black out and pass out in a ditch on the side of the road and wake up the next morning.
We had
Like,
so many of those stories.
oh,
Remember the time I was
hey, at
dating?
least I dated. At least I dated in Atlanta. That was the good thing.
Yeah, we dated a lot.
We
Like that
did.
was also one of those connective things in Atlanta. Remember the time I was like dating someone casually and he had canceled a date with me and I went out to a bar and he was there. So I had like this dramatic moment, but ended up coming home with someone else. And then he called me and I was very dramatically on the phone being like, I can't talk to you right now. This is crazy. And he was like, no, I'm downstairs because the buzzer rang to our phone.
To your phone, yeah.
And I couldn't let him up because I had someone else in my bed, but was pretending to be
Yes.
super.
It's funny because if you think about it, our lives were like a poor version of Patsy and Edina because all of these crazy dramatic things happen. Like also the time when you were dating that one guy and you had bought him barrettes. It was the early 90s, so that was the thing. You bought him the barrettes and then we went out to Backstreet and he was there and he was with some other guy and the barrettes you had given him were in the guy's hair. And so you like ran up to him and you like threw your drink in his face. Or the time that you pretended you were in Red, White, or Blue, I can't remember which film, when you were like, I think it was that same night, wasn't it? After that? And you were being really dramatic and you were rubbing your arms across the concrete walls trying to like break the skin.
I was so dramatic. Or the time that I was dating a guy that I didn't know how to break up with and you kept telling me you just have to break up with him, but I didn't want to be the bad guy. So I knew that if I manipulated him into thinking I was super serious, he would break up with me. So on Christmas, I like wrote this letter telling him that we were going to be together forever, and he broke up with me, and then we ate pills and went dancing, and there was a fire at the bar that night. Like, what? Like, our lives were just so crazy.
They were, and also because Backstreet was a 24-hour bar, and you couldn't drink 24 hours, but the bar was open 24 hours. There was a certain amount of time that you couldn't drink. I can't remember what the hours were, but like you could be there really late. They would serve really late, so it's always the place that people went, sort of after they went out if they weren't already there. So, I mean, and that was down the street from us. So, I mean, we lived in the neighborhood in Midtown, and so we were always out at Backstreet and hanging out.
But even more than that, I think, we were definitely part of the whole gay scene and participated in it. Like, we danced every night, we went to all of the different places, we partied. Remember the time, I'm telling tales. Remember the time we went to a bar?
This is going to be our most highly podcast, and everybody's going to be like, what did they do next?
We went out to a bar, and whatever I had done, I thought that I sat down and blinked, and I was like, oh, and you were like, okay, we have to go. And I was like, what? I thought I had just blinked, and you were like, you've been sleeping there for 3 hours. Like, I just went to the bar, sat down, and like apparently slept the whole time. But we did fashion shows, and we worked in really cool stores, and our New York life too. I think we were just part of an exciting scene of creative people. And in your youth, that is so formative. And I think that for us, it was even more special because it was acceptance, not only for who we were, but acceptance while we were figuring out who we were. Mm-hmm. And I think to have that freedom, there was something just really important about it in becoming kind of who we are today.
Yeah, and we were fearless back then too. Like, we did whatever, we went wherever. Like, yeah, it was really amazing. That's where we met Tracy Lords.
That we met so many people, and like I try and piece together stories because I am like an exaggerator. Like, by nature, I exaggerate things in my stories. but like it really was such a kooky time. Like, and all of a sudden I'll have this like memory, and I'm like, oh, I remember we were somewhere and they found moonshine in the shed, and so we just drank it. Like, what? Like, I don't think I would do that now. But then we were like, well, what are you gonna do?
Yeah, we were fearless back then. We just did whatever. Um, yeah, I remember, and we lived in this amazing complex called the Artist Colony. And so it was kind of like a Melrose Place. I think we mentioned this on the first episode. And so there was a pool, in-ground pool in the middle, and then all of the doors to all of the apartments faced inside to this courtyard. It was 3 levels high, artist colony. A lot of poor people that lived there because at the time it was affordable.
Yeah.
Not anymore. But it was such an eclectic and diverse and bizarre group of people that you have ever met, and mostly everybody in there was friendly with everybody else.
Yeah.
And they, they hung out. We hung out together. We would go over each other's apartments.
We really got taken in by a group of older gay guys too, who kind of taught me so much anyway. There were actually 2 former priests
Yep.
that were there, maybe one who was still a priest and not serving, I guess you call it. And I think for me, growing up in such a Catholic environment and assuming that that's kind of what my life would look like, to meet these older people who had like struggled to become who they were and really looked out for us, like took us out for dinner, cooked us, taught us things, bought us
Bought me
stuff.
my bed.
Yeah,
Bought me
it was.
my bed, like a bed, an actual bed, because I just had a futon. Then you had that futon.
And then I had that futon. I was also thinking like, that's how we know people that we're still great friends with today, like Debbie,
Yep.
who we met because she was the waitress at the restaurant next door. And she was she's, someone I still speak to, and just such an amazing example for me of someone who just lives her life completely honestly. Like, she still calls me Jim because she met me when I first moved there with you.
Right.
And she just told it like it was right from the beginning. Like, she has no need to not live her own life. And I think that was so inspiring for me. And she really took me under her wing. And when you left, she gave me a place to live. And she taught me so many things that I still use today. And I think that's one of the reasons why I think I mentor so much, and why I, take such an interest in people finding their own voice, because for me, it really allowed me to find my own life.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it is. And I think it, again, going back to like Ab Fab, like that was what they did. They did what they wanted to do to find. I mean, they sort of knew who they were, but they were still finding who they were. They're still, if you look at it, they're still kind of lost, and always trying to achieve something and not knowing what that thing is, and always saying, well, this is the next thing. This is what I need. I need to get this person to PR this person, and then I'll be fine. But, there's never that, because they were always searching. And at that time, we were both really searching for who we were. And I think, yeah, both growing up Catholic, and also, growing up in this where you think, when I was growing up, even after well, no, not after I came out, because that wouldn't make sense. But like even up to that point, like throughout high school, I always said like I wasn't going to have sex till marriage, because that was the way that I was brought up, and that's what I believed in. Then I came out and I was like, well, that's not going to happen, because we weren't allowed to marry back then anyway. So that would have never happened. But yeah, I think about that, and there was a lot of similarities with this show with the Mary Tyler Moore Show that I found, that it was groundbreaking in the way that it portrayed women. These were women that had never been portrayed on television before. Independent, strong women who took charge of their life, who did what they wanted to do. And they were like women behaving like spoiled men.
Yeah.
And you had never seen that on television before. And they also gave, like Mary Tyler Moore Show had all those different female characters that were prominent characters on it. They did the same exact thing. You had Jane Horrocks as Bubble, and then later as Katie Grin, and who was just this ridiculous, over the top character, which then sort of balanced out Patsy and Edina, because then they didn't seem quite as crazy because you had someone that was like way crazier. And then you had Mother, who is June Whitfield, who, you know, was sort of like this weird in between. She was supposed to be like this normal, you know, mother, grandmother woman, but sort of on the verge of Alzheimer's all the time, but then would like say things that you would never expect her to say. So she wasn't this like conservative woman that you thought there were. And then you had Safi, the daughter, who was probably the most conservative out of all of them, who was sort of the complete opposite. And so it was this really great representation of all these facets of a person so that you could relate. Same way as Mary Tyler Moore, there's someone that you can sort of cling on to and relate to.
Yeah. I think it's funny too as I get older, because now we're probably older than they were in the first series.
In this series, she Edina starts out, she's 40, I think, or somewhere around. I think she turns 40 in the series because she has the birthday party where they do the karaoke.
Right. So we're older now
Yeah.
than they were in the series. And, you know, my life hasn't really changed so much. But I do think I'm like not as concerned. You know, like I definitely go to parties now where I am the oldest person there by like decades. I definitely work in an industry now, you know, in fashion. Sometimes on set, I am 20 years older than everybody else that's there. And I'm okay with it. Like I kind of know who I am now. I don't have to prove anything like I did then. It's like I've kind of found myself, but I do think it's funny because, you know, then we would look and we'd be like, oh my God, it's so crazy. They're still going to parties at that age, you know, and still doing that. And like, I think I've definitely calmed down, but I think now I understand like when you're just being yourself, when you are just being authentically you, and when you have your people that you can do that with, it makes it easier to just kind of keep moving forward as yourself.
Yeah, I agree. And I've definitely mellowed out a lot, you know, from way back then. And definitely don't do as much of what I did back then. But would that shall remain anonymous. But yeah, and I think there's something really great about that, and something really great about going through that time when you are discovering who you are and you are not afraid to sort of take these risks and take these chances. And then you get to an age where you're like, okay, like those, I needed to do those things because this is what made me who I am. You know, I always say that, you know, as much as I wish that I hadn't gotten married and gotten divorced, you know, which would have put me in a much better place financially in my life, I wouldn't be the person that I am today without having gone through that. You know, that was a really important thing for me to go through, to learn a lot about myself, you know, and so I think all of those things are really, really important.
Like the idea of kind of becoming who you are because of what you've lived.
Yeah. Yeah, I like it. Yeah, and I mean, we have so many Atlanta stories, some of probably which cannot be told because now we're actually on iTunes now. Our
Oh,
podcast is on iTunes, so that's news. I should have said that in the beginning. I just got the notification. So I don't think we can probably tell some of those stories, but
I mean, that's one other thing with being older is I'm kind of like, I don't care at this
yeah.
point. But
True.
as long as my mom's not listening and I'm good.
Yeah. You know, one of the things I also found out, which was really interesting, was that they actually based Edina on a real person.
Yeah.
Lynn Forks, who was this PR woman, and it was right when PR was becoming really big and no one quite knew what PR was. And she started her PR company at 21, and in 1979, she was commissioned to promote Gloria Vanderbilt jeans in the UK. Well, I don't know. Mr. Drag did a whole thing about how, he had dated Anderson Cooper and how he had met his mother many years earlier when she asked him to do a commercial for Gloria Vanderbilt jeans. So when I was writing this story, I was like, well, let me look up a commercial so that I can just like say the lines. And I'm going to put that commercial right here. It is the most ridiculous thing, most like white privileged, out of touch commercial that you have ever seen.
They're the tops, they're the upper stratas, they're the jeans with the social status. Girls with private jets and with fancy pets think they're tops, they're caviar. They're for girls who have chauffeured caddies. They're for girls blessed with wealthy daddies. They're the jeans that fit when you stand or sit. They don't stop because Gloria Vanderbilt bottoms all the time.
Now at Hudson's.
Yeah, I think we're going to wrap this up. So would you like to start off with the thing that brought you joy this week?
Yeah. So very unexpectedly, I went out of the city this weekend, and it was amazing because I have not left my house. And a friend of mine has a house upstate, and they said, let's go and celebrate her birthday. And we did all of the shopping and stuff in New York City so that we wouldn't have to, go into the town. And we were very mindful of that. But to just be outside and in front of a bonfire and cooking on a grill, like I think people who aren't in New York maybe or other cities like that don't understand what it's like when you don't have green space. And while I do walk every day, I walk to the river, east or west, or I'll go to the park. There's something just so different about being able to sit in front of a fire and make a s'mores and listen to music. And I was only gone for one day, and taking the one day off actually has made today like a crazy day of catch up. But I needed that. I needed the time. And so I'm really grateful for friends and bonfires and grills. And I'm looking forward to, seeing people again.
Yeah, I have to say the same thing. I had a socially distanced barbecue with Ange and Tony and Soph, their daughter, and our friend Chris Rose. And it was it was great to see them, but it was I had such a strange feeling after because I couldn't hug them. I mean, you were talking last week, your moment of joy was about like hugging your friend and him sort of breaking down because of lacking that touch. And I think that was such a strange thing for me to be there, we're all sitting like distanced away from each other. And then, Ange cooked everything, and then it was out on the table, and we had to go one at a time to the table. And then I forgot something, and I instinctively just got up to go to the table to get it. And then someone else was at the table, and I was like, oh wait, I'm not supposed to be that close. Like, I have to go away. And, I thought of using that as my moment of joy because it was so great to see them. But at the same time, it was such a mixed feeling of not being able to really be with them. And I talked with her today about it, and we both sort of had that feeling. Like it was so wonderful to see each other, but at the same time, you feel awkward and you feel strangely uncomfortable because you don't feel like you can do the things that you would normally do or be the way that, and you always have to be like looking. But I am so looking forward to going back to when like I can just be relaxed amongst my friends and just hang out and not care, not worry. And I think we would have been fine. I mean, we've all been healthy and we've all been taking precautions and, but yeah, I understand that.
Well, I look forward to seeing you. Hopefully we'll have a hangout soon.
I know.
In person.
I know. That would be really
Pretend
nice.
Back in Atlanta.
Oh my God, we could do a podcast up here together. You could just be beside me we would just have to record it. It would be really funny if we were on Zoom across the table from each other, but sadly that doesn't work because sound doesn't go very well. But so my moment of joy is, I've been working on a lot of creative things, and I've sort of reached a creative burnout right now, where I'm having a really hard time focusing on the things that I need to focus on. I have about like 3 or 4 projects that I'm working on that it's taking a lot to get me motivated to finish them and to do them, but I really want to. But this week, a good friend of mine, Kat Adler, is doing this 24-hour durational piece at the Shea Theater, which is going to be televised live on Facebook. And they've done something like this before. It's called Artifacts of the Ephemeral, and it's sort of like each hour is something different, and there's different parts of it, like movement, art, all kinds of stuff. So this time they're doing it as a benefit for the Shea, the theater that we do everything at. And because the Shea has been closed and it's not a huge theater, so they don't have a whole lot of money. So they're doing it as a benefit for the Shea. And they asked different artists to do a collaboration with them. And so my collaboration is I created a 1-hour soundscape. So it has like music, it has poetry, it has sound effects. And I was able to create this thing, and I loosely based it on Alice in Wonderland. So I sort of like went through the story of Alice in Wonderland and picked out like certain characters or certain points of what I thought was important, and then created this whole soundscape for that. And then the last couple of days I've gone into the Shea and taken over the green room.
Really interesting.
But I was able to take over the green room and sort of create this space. And it's something that I've done in the past, doing performances, immersive performances at the Shea. And it's been something that I've been really, really missing doing, being there and performing. And even though I'm not going to be performing, I was able to create this amazing space with all these places that they can go, and there's stuff that they can eat, stuff that they can drink, stuff that they can put on, stuff that they can play with. There's a place where they can do a little bit of art, and I created this soundscape. So it starts off and there's a lot, it's like really short, and there's a lot of like these short moments and sound effects and all these things. And then as it goes on, you start to hear more and more of the songs, and it's longer. I mixed in like this amazing, I read a poem myself of James Bell. I used some of Patrick Stewart, doing his sonnet a day. I used one of his sonnets. There was this recording of Dennis Hopper from the Johnny Cash show that I found, reading I think it was a Rudyard Kipling poem. It was just really fun. So it was like an amazing thing to sort of go back into that world, which I was a part of, that I've been missing so much of, being by myself. That was good. That was a good thing to do for the last couple of days.
Patsy and Edina, when they are buying art, you can drop the attitude, we're going to shop, and then she comes home and it's like, this is the clairvoyant.
Wood on wall. It's fabulous.
It's hangers.
It's hangers.
This is, darling, this is the materialization of the psychotic's dream, deciphered by a clairvoyant. Hangers. It's hangers. It's hangers.
And that's her dead father in a coffin.
Well, thank you for some great reminders of how fun I used to be.
You still are. And I think it's just a good reminder of, maybe not being that crazy and that ridiculous, and but to keep a little bit of that into your life. I think that's really
important. I think we both can safely say we have become characters, like we are definitely those like kooky people that we set out to be.
I know. We do need to start wearing more interesting, ridiculous clothes.
I told you, when quarantine is over, it is just capes, even though it's going to be 100 degrees.
I know. Well, we'll just have to find an alternative to a cape to use during the warm weather. What is it?
Capelets.
Cape Lids, still very warm.
Windsor.
And I still am refusing to get a beret. So I won't
Nobody believes you.
I won't be wearing a beret.
So do I say who we're doing next week?
What?
Do I say who we're doing next week, or do we not reveal that?
No, it's always a surprise every week. Well, not to us, but everybody else. So you don't say who we're doing next week, but you can tell me after. So I want to thank you everyone for joining us this week on Parallel Drives. I'm Joe DeLude, this is James Benson, and we hope to see you again next week. You can catch us on Buzzsprout. You can catch us on my YouTube channel if you want to watch the video where you get fun little pictures of us when back from
my YouTube channel.
Huh? You should.
I should probably post it on my YouTube channel.
You probably should, yeah, because the video is kind of fun because I mix in little clips of whatever we're talking about, and also old pictures of us or whatever. So when you're listening to it, you only hear the audio of it, but when you watch it, you actually get to see cool video and stuff like that. So yeah, join us again, and we are on iTunes now, so you can find us on iTunes. Woohoo! And we will see you next week.
I tip my beret to you, Joe.